game's not over yet, so you still have time.
He's a typical New Jersey teenager.
Sorry.
Except for the bullet wound he suffered as a baby.
It actually went right into my arm right there, and it went through here and came out there.
His adoptive mother thought he was a war orphan.
There wasn't ever a time when I thought, during the time Peter had been with me, you know, for 13 years, that a family would show up.
Then came the phone call that would solve the mystery.
It was pretty scary.
And it led to a reunion with family who never stopped searching for him.
And they always knew I was alive, but they never really knew where I was.
Tonight, Finding Ernesto, a child of war, discovers his roots. Father Don Dahl is a Jesuit priest from Creighton University. He flew down to El Salvador to chronicle one story, but when he got there, he found another, so dramatic in its impact that he called us to see if we'd be interested in putting it on the air. We were. We are. But first, a few words about the story that drew Father Dahl down to El Salvador in the first place. It was an anniversary, the 10th anniversary of an event so brutal that it shocked people even in the context of a war that ultimately killed more than 75,000 civilians. On November 16, 1989, 6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper, and her 15-year-old daughter were murdered at the University of Central America. Later investigations would pin the crime on an elite unit of the Salvadoran army. Memorializing that event was Father Dahl's mission, but he discovered another victim of another crime, a young mother who'd been murdered and her infant son who'd been kidnapped by soldiers, labeled a war orphan and made available for adoption. But we'll let Father Dahl tell you the story.
This rose garden commemorates the 2 women and the 6 Jesuit priests who were brutally killed by the Salvadoran army 10 years ago.
Y aquí les Amando López, que también lo vinieron arrastrando ya muerto desde el cuarto con todos los...
The Jesuits were called from their rooms in the middle of the night and made to lie face down in the garden and shot in the back of the head.
It seems that with their shooting them in the head, they wanted to take the brain out of them, like to destroy the origin of everything these Jesuits had said in their lives.
Father John Cortina had lived with these men for years and happened to be away from the Jesuit university the night of the killings. Despite the loss of his fellow priests, Father Cortina was not deterred. Instead, his resolve was strengthened to continue their mission.
So in some way, it's like being pushed or being pinched to continue the work for justice, for the poor.
Nearly half the population of El Salvador lives in poverty. Father Cortina believes that they should at least live in dignity. As an engineer, he has helped the war-torn people to rebuild their homes and construct a water system.
This is very important. I mean, if you can imagine what it means to have water.
And as a priest, he preaches to rebuild the spirits of the people who survived the war. But he found a wound in many families that wouldn't heal. As part of the Army's scorched earth policy, children of the opposition were abducted from the battlefield by soldiers and falsely labeled war orphans. Many were channeled into a corrupt and lucrative adoption business.
The forced disappearance of children during the war had been kept as a secret. You know, it was concealed, it was only known within the families, the affected families. But it wasn't an issue that society was recognizing or was working on.
When authorities ignored the families' petitions for help, Cortina led a grassroots effort to find their missing sons and daughters. They call themselves the Association in Search of Disappeared Children.
Slowly, they started finding children. So they demonstrated that it is possible to find them.
Now we have 520 requests of search, and we have found 98.
Peter?
What we intend as association is to give them their true identity.
There wasn't ever a time when I thought, during the time Peter had been with me, for 13 years, that a family would show up. I mean, of all the people that I have known that adopted children, I had the least amount of information about the family.
What are you thinking of for your birthday?
Kathleen Cassidy, a New Jersey social worker, adopted Ernesto Cibrian from El Salvador in 1984. She renamed the 2-year-old boy Peter. For 13 years, she thought her son was a war orphan. But then she got a call from Cortina's association.
I think I was so nervous that I didn't quite get what it was. He told me the purpose of their agency and that they had located the adoption record of Ernesto Cibrian and that they had traced him to me. Well, it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary. He was very sensitive about the fact that my first concern would be that they wanted to disrupt the adoption. And of course it was. That was my first concern,
Who goes long for a pass?
I also knew Peter was 15, in the middle of his adolescence, and I couldn't think of a worse time.
Peter, his name before he was adopted in the States was Ernesto Cibrian. His grandmother lives in Guarjila, his sister also, so he has family here.
The Cibrian family was among the first to share its loss with Father Cortina. Although the war had left them with little means, they used everything they had to search for their stolen child, Ernesto. When they found out that he was alive and living in Princeton, New Jersey, his grandmother Narcisa immediately sent a letter to Kathleen.
I got a letter from his grandmother. It was so moving. She told me about who she was and how her daughter had been killed.
Your mother's name was Eulalia Cibrian. You were taken away with your sister by the soldiers to the barracks, where they were carrying out an army raid against the guerrillas. They murdered a total of 80 people in the Guarjila River. Your mother was murdered too. She was 23 years old and you were just a baby. We have spent many, many years searching for you and we couldn't find you.
How could that happen? How could they just be taking children and make them available for adoption and go through the court process? These adoptions went through the court process in El Salvador. They're formal legal adoptions. And there were many children from El Salvador who were available from adoption. I knew he had been shot, although I didn't know the circumstances. How could it have been good? But all they had to do was send me a picture of him. Just adorable, just this cute little guy, And I thought, well, of course. And I think you know. I think you know that this is the child that God intended for you. This is meant to be, And I always felt that way. As soon as I saw the pictures, I felt that way. And I've continued to feel that way, He was meant to be my boy,
They have no offense. All they have is defense.
I needed to calm myself on the whole issue that this wouldn't mean that he wouldn't be my son. Because, it didn't really matter whether it wasn't their intention to disrupt the adoption. I had no idea what Peter's thoughts would be. And it took me a couple days to tell Peter. I had to get my bearings a little bit, talk to a few people and this and that. But he wanted to go the next day. So there wasn't any hesitation on his part, I was just going to have to be brave, and courageous, and just go ahead, take the journey, take the journey, whatever it was going to mean. So it didn't take us very long. We were in El Salvador in a month.
When we come back, how Peter was kidnapped after nearly becoming a casualty in the Salvadoran Civil War. In March 1998, Peter Cassidy first met his biological family in El Salvador, his American adopted mother by his side. But this past summer, Peter, now 16, visited the Cibrians on his own, a chance to feel part of the family he hardly knows.
The reunion with the family is always to try to give the person back his right to identity.
If you could do whatever you can, so they could still spot your American out of the crowd for some reason.
What is important is that they know who they are. And up to now, they don't.
At first, we didn't know anything, nothing at all. We didn't know if he was alive or dead. When we found out that he was alive, we were so happy. We wanted to see him.
When I first saw him, it was really weird because they all looked at me with this weird look because they remembered me as a little short, fat kid, and they're a little tall kid who's taller than all of them.
And when we saw him for the first time, we wanted the days to last longer.
They always knew I was alive, but they never really knew where I was, so I guess it really eased a lot of them.
Are you happy to be here?
Yeah. It's funny, it's like 2 days ago here in New York. Padre John is like, he just says don't really feel like you're a guest. Just feel like you're part of them. Just basically get to know them more and get to understand them. Build a relationship.
The fact that he had a sister was so important to him. He loved the idea. He could focus on that more than having this big family.
This is the picture of my mother, and when she got shot, it actually went right into my arm right there, and it went through here and came out there because I was actually, she had me in her arms, so it went through her breast, right into my arm and up and out.
Peter learned the origin of his bullet wound and how his mother had been killed from his sister Lillian, who witnessed the army massacre when she was only 6.
And the planes were flying overhead and the soldiers were on the ground. And we felt trapped, like there was no way to escape. And I was with my mother and another woman, and we sat on a rock.
And a soldier actually came up on the rock behind her and shot her overhead.
I was here, my mother was here, and my little brother Ernesto, he was the smallest, and she was holding him in her arms against her chest. And the soldier shot her right here in the chest, and she died right away. I didn't get hit, but I was all covered with her blood.
And then Lillian was there, and Lillian Lillian tried to pick her up too. You know, mommy, get up. And obviously, she couldn't get up, and she then picked up Peter and ran with him to the river.
And then they separated me from Ernesto because he was smaller and he was wounded. And I said they should leave him there because I was his sister, and they said no. He's wounded, he's too little, and he's going to be taken to a place where women can take care of him, where they have orphans and little kids.
The idea that you would use children as ploys in a war is extremely overwhelming. And I don't think there's any other way of thinking about it but as a terrorist act, really. I mean, how else could you really tell people that you were trying to take all power and control away from them in any better way than taking their children?
Not only did the soldiers take Narcisa's grandson and murder her daughter, she also suffered the loss of 4 sons in the Civil War.
The United States, I believe, financed that war. I believe that, you know, probably the guns that shot all of her children came from the United States or were paid for by the United States. I think probably the soldiers who did the killing may have even gone to the School of the Americas. I mean, there's good reason for anyone who fought with the revolutionaries in El Salvador to really not accept or like Americans. And that was one of my fears also, you know, how How could they accept me? You know, wouldn't I represent all this to them? And it was clear that they just saw me as a person, you know, just a person.
Pero uno los perdona para que uno lo perdone Dios a uno, porque
I forgive those who killed my children, and I have to forgive them because I want God to forgive me.
Inspired by the faith of people like Narcisa, Father Cortina preaches the healing power of forgiveness, but not forgetting the truth of what happened. His association's success in finding children is attributed to the same clarity of mission.
We'll never push for prosecution. We only push for the truth to appear. And the truth will do whatever she has to do.
I would like to praise Father Cortina because of the way he's doing it. I think he's doing it in the only possible way of doing it. He's saying, we are not here looking for revenge. We are not here looking for who's guilty. We are here just to provide the opportunity for these mothers and these children to get together at least once and to know that they still exist, that they're doing okay, that they love each other in absence.
I have a lot of deep roots with them. A lot of my family lives here. And they acknowledge you that you're part Salvadoran. And that no matter, even if you do live in the States, you'll always have a place here. So it's kind of cool.
On one hand, it was a very hard thing to have to deal with, that he had family that was looking for him on one level. But on another level, I always knew that it would turn out to be something that was really positive for him. One of those things like, you know, it'll work out in the end. It might not look so pretty right now. It might not feel so good right now, but it'll be the right thing, you know. And, but it's been scary. It's not been easy. It's now the fall of 1999, and you know, the phone call that I first got about Peter's having a family in El Salvador was in the end of February in '98, and I think to myself, was that only a year and a half ago? I mean, my life feels like it's changed a great deal, and I think his has too. But I think it was a journey that had to happen, and I think it's been really a wonderful one.
You want hockey? We'll give you hockey. I got Boston, baby. Where's the phone? Where's the phone?
Living in Princeton as a teenager, you don't have all that much opportunity to see how other people live and to know how different things are than your own world. And he's had that opportunity in a pretty significant way. And I think it's changed him. It's changed him in a way that can only be better.
You learn about two different lifestyles and how people appreciate the stuff they do have and the stuff they don't have. And you just learn the different combination between that. So it's kind of fun.
Don't forget to pick up the football tickets.
I think one of the things that has been and continues to be really something very important to him, that they were looking for him. That all of this had happened. Here there was this war, and they had all of these other children, and this was this enormous family, but that they were looking for him. You know, they hadn't forgotten about him.
Actually, they were looking for me the whole time. Like, actually, during the war, I was taken from them without any legal permission or whatever, just like a lot of other kids were.
By whom?
The government.
Yeah.
Military.
Disaster like the one we just experienced.
I would never say I was glad that I was taken, but the fact is I did get a lot more opportunity. And in the long run, I could probably help them out more. I got a higher education, and if they were ever in trouble, I could help them out with money, so that kind of feels good.
Even though Peter would tell you that this has all been a wonderful experience for him, I don't think it's been an easy experience. You know, when you're a teenager, the thing that you need to be more than anything else is exactly like everybody else. Well, he has a single mother, he's adopted, he's of a different race. Now, he has another family in El Salvador. I mean, this does not make him your average teenager, and I don't think that's easy.
Now you're back.
And you know, I think to myself, I guess part of the reason that I'm his mother is because I'm somewhat of a risk taker, and I was able to make the journey that was needed. I think, oh well, I guess God was right. We were the right match.
One postscript to our story tonight, a personal one to those of us here at Nightline. Back in the 1980s, no producer on our staff spent more time in Central America covering the wars in Nicaragua and El Salvador than a young woman named Pam Kahn. Her passion for the story lasted until Pick's disease, a rare brain disorder, destroyed much of her ability to remember. Pam died today at the all too young age of 45. She was a wonderful person and a great producer, and the story we brought you tonight would have been right up her alley. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.